sides of it is great mountain ranges. And so what happens is that cool air comes off the top of the mountains. It rushes down into the Sea of Galilee, down the mountains, and when they collide, the cause is a what? A great storm. This sea is still known for sudden storms today. I understand you can be out there on a beautiful day, and before you know it, you are in a storm. It's just set up for that because the mountains are so high on both sides and the air rushes down. Now this sea, Jesus in the New Testament, we have recorded for us 33 miracles of Jesus. 33 miracles of Jesus in the New Testament. 10 of 33 are around or either on the sea itself. 10 of 33. Go back to that slide again, Mason. Do you see Bethsaida up there? Top north, right side. You have Capernaum. You have Magdala. What was, don't we call Mary Magdalene? Guess where she was from? Magdala. Mary Magdalene. You have Tiberias. Jerusalem is down to the south of it, as I mentioned a while ago. And so a lot of things happen around this Sea of Galilee. And, Jesus was there when he called Peter, Andrew, James, and John to do what? Come follow me and I'll make you what? Fishers of men. So it's not uncommon for these great storms to happen. And nothing has changed. Over a period of time, the land may change. I'm sure there's land in this part of the country that does not look like it did when you was a child. Right? But you know what? Those seas and rivers, they don't change much, really. It's still the same Sea of Galilee, same Jordan River. And so, the great storm is likely to happen. They just swoop down upon the lake. I want to read you a little account of Brother McGarvey in a report about things of the Bible. He says, suddenly, about midday, there was a sound of distant thunder and a small cloud. No bigger than a man's hand, he said, was seen rising over the heights of Lubulum to the west. In a few moments, the cloud appeared to spread, and heavy black masses came rolling down the hills toward the lake. At this moment, the breeze died away. There were a few minutes of perfect calm, during which the sun shone out with intense power, and the surface of the lake was smooth and even as a mirror. Tiberias, Medea, and other buildings stood out in sharp relief from the gloom behind them, but they were soon lost sight of as the thunder gusts swept past them and rapidly advancing across the lake lifted the placid water into a bright sheet of foam. So he describes how at one point it was like what? The water like a mirror, that's still. And all of a sudden, before you know it, what has happened? A great storm. So you think now about these disciples. They're in this boat. They're making their way across with their oars, no doubt. They're propelling to across the water, and this storm is going to happen. And darkness has now descended. And they have been rowing hard for some period of time. I don't know how long, but they've been out a pretty good while, and they've only made a distance of about 3 to 3.5 miles. That's 25 to 30 furlongs. They've been rowing and rowing and rowing, and they made it about halfway across. At its widest point, it was how wide across did I say? 9 miles. They're about 3.5 across. The storm pretty fierce. We're told that fear gripped those disciples. This storm has created a measure of fear on their part. And they look out and they see some person walking upon the waves. And he's walking toward their ship. Again, you can read Mark's account and Matthew's as well. But he said unto them, It is I, be not afraid. Then they willingly received him into the ship, and immediately the ship was at the land whither they went. Now sometimes we miss the miracle. Now we understand that Jesus walking on the water is a miracle, right? I mean, you and I, we don't walk on water. No earthly being walks on the water, right? But Jesus is walking on the water to them, and they receive him, and the Bible says immediately the ship was at their destination. Jesus says, don't be afraid, dismiss your fear. It's the Lord who you're seeing. And you know they knew his voice. His voice offered some comfort to those disciples, courage they needed. He comes upon the ship, and immediately the ship is now where? At their destination. Now, I mentioned a while ago before we started this lesson, you know, Matthew includes more details. Matthew includes another event that happened on this occasion. You know what it was, right? Who wanted to walk with Jesus on the water? Peter did. You remember that. And you know that Peter made a few steps anyway, didn't he? But the Bible, which I've always felt to be an odd description, the Bible describes it as beginning to sink. You know, if I walk on the water, I'm not going to begin to sink. But Peter, as his faith wavered, began to what? He began to sink. I've often wondered, was it ankle high, and then shin high, and then knee high? I don't know. He began to sink, Matthew says. But John does not include this in his description. And so, as I said, Matthew does, Matthew 14, beginning in about verse 26. And so, they recognize in this account, they recognize his voice. And, you know, you would think that probably when he first began to speak, it might not have been as distinct, but as he draws closer, they hear him saying, It is I, be not afraid. And his disciples were able to dispel their fear because Jesus was walking on the water and told them to not be afraid. And you remember that Peter desired to do the same thing, and but Peter's faith began to waver, and Peter began to sink. All right, the next slide. All right, the next one. Now, we talked about this a minute ago. Another name for the Sea of Galilee is what? Tiberias, exactly right. Kinnereth, Tiberias, but it's all referred to what? The Sea of Galilee. At its longest point, 14 miles long. At its widest point, 9 miles wide. And if you saw how that was shaped, you had to get to the very right place to make it 9. A lot of times you'll read and it'll say 12 miles long and 6 miles wide, because that's more like the overall size of it. The next one. Why did a great multitude follow Jesus at the Sea of Galilee? Well, we talked about that. You know, these people, they're following Jesus wherever he goes. Why were they following him? Well, this is prior to that, though. This is when he first started now. That's when they come to where he's at. You know, he's not fed them yet. They're following him because they see his miraculous work of healing. They see Jesus healing all these people. And the multitude, they want what? They want what he has to offer, so they just keep following him. And that's when we first get to John chapter 6, by the way. The next one. Which of the disciples did Jesus ask the question, when shall we buy bread? That you remember who asked? He asked Philip. Jesus did ask Philip, where are we going to buy bread that these may eat? Now, we talked about that. You know, the Godhead has never asked a question for information's sake. Jesus knew exactly what he was going to do. He asked that to gauge where Philip was. The next one. How many men did he feed with the 5 loaves and 2 fish? 5,000 men. By the way, that sea we talked about this morning, there's 2 main kind of fish that are caught from that Sea of Galilee. One is called a mush, and probably the kind Peter was catching as a fisher. The other kind, though, are little 2-inch fish, sort of similar to sardines. Little 2-inch fish, sort of like a sardine. I've often thought those 2 fish were probably little what? 2-inch. Because they're described as what? Described as being little, small. Hey, we've got 5 loaves of bread. We have 2 small fish. I don't think it was the mush. I think it was a little sardine they were talking about there. And Jesus still able to feed that whole bunch, 5,000 men plus women and children, whatever their number is. Some say 10,000, some 15,000. I don't know. I'm going to tell you something. If he fed 100 with 5 bread and 2 fish, it's a miracle. And then when we got done, you saw he had what? He had 12 baskets of bread that remained. And everybody ate till they were full. All right, the next question. Who broke the news that a lad had 5 loaves and 2 fish? Who told Jesus that? Andrew. Somebody said Andrew? Andrew told him that. Next question. Jesus offered the people bread and fish to eat. How many baskets of food were left after everyone had eaten to his full? I just told you that. There was 12, right? 12 baskets remain. What a tremendous event. Next. What did the people do when they saw that Jesus had fed them with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish? You see those different answers? Sang Hosanna, they hailed him, professed that Jesus was a prophet, or convinced that he was divine. They know this is that prophet. That prophet spoken about, that we've heard about all of our lives. This is him. Next. What did Jesus do when he perceived that the people would come and take him by force and make him a king? He hid, forbid them, crossed one other side, or went on to the mountain. Went to the mountain. Again, don't miss that point. All these people insist that it was God's plan for Jesus to establish a kingdom upon this earth and rule with great might. And one day that's going to occur. And so we have to do our very best to ensure that Israel is preserved. Because one day Jesus is going to come back and there in Israel somewhere establish a physical throne. Right now in John 6, They want to make him be king. I thought that's what God intended. No. If it was, he could have been king right now. These people have saw what Jesus has done. They would have picked him up and put him on their shoulders, and they'd have hauled him to Jerusalem. But it wasn't the plan of God. And so Jesus goes onto the mountain to escape. Next one. According to John 6, after feeding the multitude, what major event soon followed? Well, we talked about that this morning. Walked on the sea. And Matthew 14 says that's when Peter walked on the sea a little while as well and began to sink. Next one. According to John 6, after the miracle of the feeding, Jesus and his disciples traveling a boat to where? Where were they going? To Capernaum. I believe that's the last one. Yeah. All right. The multitude are going to be seeking for Jesus. Now the day following, verse 22, when the people which stood on the lake, on the other side of the sea, when they saw that there was another boat there. Now get it. The day has passed. It's the next day. The people on that side of the sea where Jesus was, they look out and they see there are no other boats here, save the one whereunto his disciples were entered. And that Jesus went not with his disciples into the boat. Now they knew that Jesus was not in the boat when his disciples left, but that his disciples were going away alone. Howbeit, there came other boats from Tiberias down to the place where they did eat bread, after that the Lord had given thanks. So they know that the only boat on that side of the sea, which the Lord's disciples had taken even before, only one boat there. They also know that Jesus did not go with them. Our map a while ago, Tiberias was on the south side of the sea, remember? So on the south side. Now, boats had come from that city. They had thought of the multitude being fed. Many of those people had now been transported to Capernaum. We are again told here, notice, that the Lord had given thanks for the food which served the multitude. Interesting. Twice in this account, we are told that Jesus gave thanks for the food. Back in John chapter 1, at verse 1 beginning, in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. We continue, all things were made by Him, and without Him was not anything made that was made. Jesus was the creator, just as much as God was. But Jesus apparently knew that his Father deserved the expression of gratitude for the gracious provision of their food. It's interesting to me. I noticed he didn't thank himself. I noticed he gave thanks to the Father. I think it's interesting because we have a lot of discussion today in religious circles about prayers being offered to Jesus. Jesus, the Creator, not anything was made without Him. Jesus gave thanks to the Father. Tiberius. When the people therefore saw that Jesus was not there, neither his disciples, they also took shipping and came to Capernaum seeking for Jesus. When they had found him on the other side of the sea, they said unto him, Rabbi, when camest thou hither? They discovered that Jesus nor his disciples are on the eastern side of the sea. They board the ship now, and they sailed to Capernaum. The Lord is not on the eastern side of the Sea of Galilee, he's on the western side. Their natural curiosity prompts them to ask the question, when and how did you cross the sea? When and how? They knew only one boat, right, had left. They want to know, when did you come over here and how did you get over here? If you have read this further, you know the Lord does not provide an answer to their question. He don't tell them. Is that interesting to you? You know, every question asked of Jesus, he did not answer directly. We're going to keep on, Lord willing, in Proverbs, we're going to have two verses back to back. One's going to say, answer a fool, and the other is going to say, answer not a fool. Sometimes we answer, and sometimes we what? Jesus don't answer their question. He's going to leave them to be curious about that. Jesus answered and said, and they asked him when and how. He said, verily, verily, I say unto you, ye seek me not because ye saw the miracles, but because ye did eat of the loaves and were filled. Labor not for the meat which perisheth, but for that meat which endureth unto everlasting life, which the Son of Man shall give unto you, for him hath God the Father sealed. Jesus said, you are not seeking me because you saw the signs. You are seeking me because you were filled. And he says, don't worry and labor for the food that perishes. You need to be more concerned about what? A food that endures to everlasting life. Again, the Master Jesus could easily read their true motives. They had been searching for him since he crossed the sea. But he knows they are not seeking him to learn about the truth. They're wanting more of that food which satisfied their physical appetite. I'm going to tell you something. I've often thought about the fact, if you were fed by a miracle of Jesus, it had to be the most satisfying physical food that you had ever tasted, because it was a Godhead at work. At that Cana feast of wedding back in John chapter 2, it had to be the most excellent drink they'd ever drunk. Jesus made it. They are seeking him because they want more of that physical food. All the miracles that Jesus performed were only tools. They were tools to confirm his identity, a tool to prove his message as being from God. They are not interested in the truth that he taught. They want the food he provided. They're more concerned about physical nourishment than they are spiritual nourishment. Now you know, because we have the entire New Testament, the order of importance ought to be, first of all, seek the kingdom of God first and his righteousness. And if we'll do that, then all the physical needs will be given unto us. Matthew 6:33. Well, my time is up. Let's just mark Right where we got to right there. We'll continue there next Sunday, Lord willing, with our study of John chapter 6. Thank you for your attention.